What if I told you that the people who should protect you the most are sometimes the very ones who betray you? My name is Evelyn Reed, and for years I believed my family was my sanctuary, a safe harbor in a chaotic world. I was wrong, completely, devastatingly wrong. They didn't just betray me, they orchestrated a deception so profound, so gut-wrenching, it shattered every last piece of my trust. And the worst part? They used the one person I loved unconditionally, my own sister, as their unwitting weapon. Imagine this. You've worked your entire life, sacrificed everything, to finally achieve your dream. For me, that dream was a little apartment in downtown Boston, a place I could call my own, a sanctuary built with my blood, sweat, and tears. I scrimped, I saved, I worked 2 jobs for 5 agonizing years. Every late night, every skipped vacation, every penny hoarded, was for that tiny slice of independence. I pictured cozy evenings, my books stacked high, the city lights twinkling outside my window. It was more than just an apartment. It was the physical manifestation of my freedom, my hard-won peace. Then came the phone call. A seemingly innocent request from my mother. "Evelyn, honey, your sister Sarah needs a place to stay for a few weeks. Her landlord suddenly sold her building. You've got that spare key, right? The one under the fake rock by your hydrangeas?" My heart sank a little. Sarah was a handful, always had been. Charming, yes, but also incredibly self-centered, with a knack for turning any favor into a permanent residency. Still, she was my sister. Family helps family, right? That's what I'd been taught my whole life. So, with a deep sigh, I agreed. "Just for a few weeks, Mom. Tell her to be careful with my things." I even left a fresh set of towels out, a note with the Wi-Fi password. I tried to be a good sister, a good daughter. What I didn't know, what they never bothered to tell me, was that this wasn't a temporary favor. This was a calculated takeover, a hostile invasion disguised as family love. My parents, the very people who preached honesty and integrity, had orchestrated the entire thing. They wanted Sarah in my apartment. Not for a few weeks, but indefinitely. And they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew I was planning a move, a huge career opportunity that would take me clear across the country to California. A move I'd kept a secret, a surprise I'd planned to reveal once everything was finalized. They gave Sarah the keys to my apartment, a place I had poured my soul into without a second thought. They believed they were being clever, that they had pulled off the perfect scheme. They thought they had outsmarted me, their dutiful, unsuspecting daughter. They didn't know I'd already left, not just for California, but emotionally, spiritually. I had already packed my bags and said goodbye to the version of my family I thought I knew. The moment I found out, it wasn't a slow realization, it was a punch to the gut, a cold, hard slap of reality. A casual comment from a distant aunt, a slip of the tongue, revealed the truth. "Oh, it's so nice of you to let Sarah live in your apartment permanently, Evelyn. Your mother was so relieved she finally had a place." "Permanently?" My blood ran cold. The sheer audacity, the callous disregard for my feelings, for my property, for my life, hit me with the force of a physical blow. The resentment I'd always felt, simmering beneath the surface whenever my parents favored Sarah, exploded into a raging inferno. This wasn't just about an apartment. This was about a lifetime of being overlooked, of being taken for granted, of being treated as expendable. This was about a family that saw me as a resource to be exploited, not a person to be cherished. They had walked all over me for the last time. Every sacrifice I had made for them, every time I put their needs before my own, flashed before my eyes. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. What would you do if your own family conspired against you? If they used your kindness, your love, your trust as a weapon? Would you roll over and accept it? Or would you fight back, not with anger but with a cold, calculated precision that would leave them reeling? I chose the latter. And what happened next, what I did, changed everything. Not just for me, but for every single person who thought they could play me for a fool. Because, while they were busy celebrating their supposed victory, I was already setting a trap a trap they never saw coming, and when it sprung, it wouldn't just be my apartment keys that changed hands, it would be their entire world that came crashing down. My name is Sarah. I still remembered the exact moment my world shifted, the day the cracks in our perfect family facade finally shattered. It wasn't a sudden explosion, but a slow, insidious erosion, like water wearing down stone, until nothing was left but dust. For years I had been the good daughter, the responsible one, the quiet observer in a household dominated by my younger sister Chloe. She was the dazzling comet, all sparkle and noise, while I was just the steady moon, reflecting a borrowed light. This dynamic had always chafed, a constant, low-level hum of resentment beneath my skin. I worked hard, saved every penny, and poured my heart into building a life for myself, a life independent of their constant drama. My apartment, a small but meticulously decorated space in downtown Chicago, was my sanctuary, a testament to my own efforts, a place where I truly belonged. It was more than just four walls, it was a symbol of my hard-won freedom, my quiet triumph. Then came the phone call, the one that twisted my gut into knots and set the stage for everything that followed. My mother, her voice dripping with an artificial sweetness that always preceded a demand, asked if Chloe could stay at my place for a few weeks. "Just until she gets back on her feet, dear," she'd cooed, painting a picture of my sister as a helpless waif, a perpetual victim of circumstance. Chloe, at 26, was a master of these performances. She'd bounced from one half-baked scheme to another, leaving a trail of unpaid bills and broken promises in her wake, always expecting someone else to clean up her mess. This time, it was a sudden, dramatic breakup with her latest boyfriend, leaving her homeless and destitute. I knew it was a lie, a carefully constructed narrative designed to manipulate our parents, and by extension, me. My parents, ever the enablers, fell for it every time. Their unwavering belief in Chloe's innocence, a constant source of frustration for me, Sarah. They saw her as fragile, needing protection, while I was simply strong, capable, and therefore, expendable. I tried to refuse. I really did. I explained about my work-from-home schedule, my need for quiet, the strict building rules. But my mother was relentless, her words sharp, laced with guilt and thinly veiled accusations of selfishness. "Chloe has nowhere else to go, Sarah. Are you really going to abandon your own sister in her time of need?" The implication hung heavy in the air. I was heartless, unfeeling, a bad daughter. The familiar weight of obligation settled on my shoulders, suffocating me. I hated how easily they could still pull those strings, how deeply ingrained their expectations were. My resentment simmered, a slow burn that threatened to ignite. In the end, I caved. I always did. My mother triumphant, then dropped the true bombshell. "To make it easier, dear, we've given Chloe a spare set of your apartment keys. She'll let herself in." The words hit me like a physical blow. They had given my sister, the queen of chaos and boundary-stomping, unfettered access to my sanctuary. My parents, without a moment's hesitation, had bypassed me entirely, granting permission they had no right to give. It was a blatant invasion of my privacy, a complete disregard for my autonomy. The betrayal stung, a sharp, unexpected pain that went deeper than mere inconvenience. It wasn't just about the keys, it was about the message it sent. My boundaries didn't matter, my home wasn't truly mine, and my sister's fleeting comfort was always prioritized over my peace. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't just a temporary inconvenience, it was a deliberate act of disrespect, a public declaration of who held the power in our family dynamic. My parents, in their endless quest to coddle Chloe, had once again thrown me under the bus. But this time, something snapped inside me. The years of quiet compliance, of biting my tongue and swallowing my anger, evaporated in a flash of icy clarity. I saw their actions for what they truly were, a profound lack of trust, a casual dismissal of my feelings, and a blatant endorsement of Chloe's irresponsible behavior. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my meticulously kept apartment, the silence suddenly feeling fragile, threatened. The thought of Chloe waltzing in, uninvited, unsupervised, touching my things, disrupting my carefully constructed order, filled me with a visceral dread. My resentment deepened, transforming into something colder, sharper. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was a simmering desire for something more, a need to reclaim what was mine, to make them understand the consequences of their actions. They thought they had me trapped, that I would simply endure it, as I always had. They didn't know that their casual disregard had finally pushed me past my breaking point. They didn't know I was already making plans that would unravel their carefully woven tapestry of assumptions, plans that would make them regret ever giving Chloe those keys. They thought they knew me, Sarah, the predictable, accommodating daughter. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The conversation with my mother had ended with her usual flourish of guilt and manipulation, a masterclass in emotional blackmail. She had painted a vivid picture of Chloe's supposed despair, her fragile state, her absolute need for my sanctuary. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar, and for a fleeting moment, a tiny, almost imperceptible part of me felt a twinge of the old guilt, the familiar urge to acquiesce, to be the good daughter Sarah. But that feeling was quickly suffocated by a surging wave of something far more potent, cold, calculated resolve. My parents saw me as predictable, accommodating, the one who would always bend to their will, especially when it came to Chloe. They thought they had me figured out, a fixed point in their chaotic universe. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The immediate aftermath of that phone call was a strange mix of simmering anger and a chilling clarity. I found myself replaying years of similar scenarios, each one a fresh cut, a new layer of resentment building within me. There was the time Chloe borrowed my college tuition money for a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. Then the incident where she totaled my first car, claiming she was distraught after a breakup, leaving me to deal with the insurance and the cost of repairs. Each time my parents had swooped in, not to hold Chloe accountable, but to smooth things over, to tell me I was being unreasonable, to remind me that Chloe just needs a little more understanding. My patience, a finite resource, had finally dwindled to nothing. This wasn't about Chloe needing a place to stay. It was about their fundamental disrespect for my boundaries, for my hard work, for me. The first step was to secure my sanctuary. My apartment, my fortress of solitude, was not going to become Chloe's next playground. I spent an entire weekend meticulously going through every room, cataloging every valuable, every cherished possession. It wasn't just about protecting my belongings, it was about reclaiming my space, asserting my ownership. I packed away my grandmother's antique locket, the one priceless heirloom I possessed. My collection of first-edition novels, carefully curated over years, found a temporary home in a climate-controlled storage unit. Even my favorite coffee mug, a chipped but beloved relic from a trip to Italy, was tucked safely away. It felt almost surgical, this systematic dismantling of my home, but it was necessary. I was preparing for an invasion, and I intended to leave nothing of value behind for the approaching storm that was Chloe. The next phase involved a more subtle, yet equally crucial maneuver. I started making discreet inquiries among my friends, weaving a carefully constructed narrative about my upcoming extended work trip. I spoke of an urgent, unmissable opportunity that required me to be out of town for several months, a project so demanding it would consume all my time and energy. It was a performance, just like Chloe's, but mine was born of necessity, not manipulation. I needed a believable reason for my sudden absence, a cover story that would deflect suspicion and allow my true plans to unfold undetected. My friends, bless their unsuspecting hearts, offered congratulations and well wishes, completely unaware of the intricate web I was beginning to spin. The more I rehearsed my story, the more real it became, even to me. The final, most critical piece of my strategy involved a series of calculated risks. I changed the locks on my apartment, not just the front door, but every window that could potentially be forced open. I installed a discreet security camera system, positioning them in strategic locations to capture every angle. This wasn't about catching Chloe in the act of theft. It was about documenting everything, creating an irrefutable record of her presence, her actions, her true nature. I also set up a separate bank account, transferring a significant portion of my savings into it, an emergency fund for the inevitable fallout. I was building a firewall, protecting myself from the financial and emotional wreckage I knew Chloe was capable of creating. Each step felt like tightening a knot, securing my position, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The day my parents called to confirm Chloe's arrival was tinged with a strange sense of anticipation. My mother, her voice saccharine sweet, informed me that she and my father would be driving Chloe to my apartment themselves, dropping her off with her meager belongings. She even suggested they might help Chloe settle in, a thinly veiled attempt to assess the situation and ensure I was being accommodating. I feigned disappointment, lamenting my unavoidable work commitments that would prevent me from being there to greet them. I apologized profusely, my voice laced with a false regret that I hoped sounded convincing. They bought it, of course. They always did. They were so blinded by their belief in Chloe's innocence, so convinced of my unwavering compliance, that they never questioned anything. They saw the good daughter who always put family first, the one who could be relied upon. They didn't see the storm brewing beneath the surface, the carefully laid traps, the inevitable unraveling that was about to begin. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The storm had been brewing for far longer than they knew, a slow, simmering resentment that had finally reached its boiling point. Their blind faith in Chloe's innocence, their unwavering belief in my compliance, had left them utterly unprepared for the unraveling I had meticulously planned. They saw the good daughter who always put family first, the one who could be relied upon. They didn't see the carefully laid traps, the inevitable downfall I was about to unleash. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The phone rang again, my mother's number flashing on the screen. I let it ring, watching it vibrate on the polished surface of my kitchen counter. The insistent buzzing was like a physical prod, a reminder of the years I had spent answering their every summons, fixing every mess, sacrificing my own peace for their manufactured crises. Not anymore. The silence that followed when the ringing finally stopped was a symphony to my ears, a prelude to the freedom I was about to claim. I knew she would call Chloe next, probably with some dramatic tale of my unresponsiveness, further cementing the narrative of my sister as the victim and me as the cold, unfeeling one. It didn't matter. Their perceptions no longer held any power over me. My apartment, my sanctuary, now felt like a stage meticulously set for the final act. I walked through each room, my hand trailing over the familiar textures, the smooth cool of the granite countertop, the soft weave of the throw blanket draped over my sofa, the rough spine of a favorite book on the shelf. Every item was a testament to my independence, a tangible representation of the life I had built for myself, far away from their suffocating expectations. This place was my fortress, and they were about to discover that its walls were far more formidable than they imagined. The key they held, the one they believed granted them access, was nothing more than a prop in the elaborate play I had orchestrated. The next call came from my father, his voice laced with a forced calm that barely masked his irritation. "Sarah, your mother is worried. Why aren't you answering?" he demanded, his tone implying that my failure to immediately respond was a personal affront. I could almost picture him, pacing their manicured living room, a furrow in his brow, genuinely perplexed by my sudden defiance. They were so accustomed to my immediate obedience, my quiet acceptance of their demands, that my silence was a glitch in their carefully constructed reality. "I'm busy, Dad," I replied, my voice steady, devoid of the usual tremor of anxiety that used to accompany conversations with them. The sound of my own composure was empowering. "What do you need?" He sighed, a long suffering sound. It's about Chloe. She's had a rough time. Your mother just wants to make sure she has a place to stay. You know, just for a few weeks. The familiar refrain, the same tired script. He tried to make it sound like a simple request, a minor inconvenience, but I heard the underlying expectation, the assumption that I would, as always, fall in line. Dad, I already told Mom no, I said, my voice firm. The words felt foreign on my tongue, liberating. I had spent a lifetime saying yes, a lifetime bending to their will. This no was a declaration of war, a reclaiming of my own agency. A beat of stunned silence followed. He clearly hadn't expected such direct refusal. Sarah, be reasonable. She's your sister. Where else is she supposed to go? His voice hardened, the thinly veiled frustration giving way to outright anger. We gave her the keys to your place. She's probably already on her way. That was the moment. The exact moment I felt the last thread of obligation snap. They hadn't just asked. They had bypassed me entirely, assuming their authority superseded my ownership, my autonomy. They had taken my consent for granted, a common theme in our family dynamic. A cold, quiet rage settled in my stomach, not the fiery, explosive kind, but a deep, unyielding resolve. You gave her the keys? I repeated, my voice dangerously low. I wasn't asking for confirmation. I was letting the words hang in the air, allowing the full weight of their presumption to settle between us. To my apartment? Yes, well, it's family, Sarah, he stammered, clearly sensing the shift in my tone. He was trying to backtrack, to smooth over their egregious overstep, but it was too late. The line had been crossed. We just thought it would be easier. She's in a difficult situation. Easier for whom, Dad? I countered, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Easier for Chloe? Easier for you and Mom to avoid dealing with her? It certainly isn't easier for me. My voice rose slightly, the carefully constructed calm beginning to crack. You had no right. This is my home, my sanctuary, and you just gave away the keys. He started to protest, to explain, to rationalize their actions, but I cut him off. It doesn't matter. It's too late. I paused, letting the implications sink in. Chloe won't be staying at my apartment. Not now, not ever. What are you talking about, Sarah? What have you done? His voice was a mix of confusion and dawning dread. He knew me, knew that when my voice dropped to that level, something significant had happened. What I've done, Dad, I said, a chilling smile forming on my lips, is protect my home. And myself. I took a deep breath, the air filling my lungs with a sense of delicious anticipation. You see, I moved out this morning. Every single one of my belongings is gone. The apartment is completely empty. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening, a vacuum where his bluster and self-righteousness had been. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the sudden realization of the chaos they had unwittingly unleashed. Chloe, arriving with her suitcases, expecting a fully furnished apartment, only to find a hollow shell. The image was almost too perfect. You moved out? He finally choked out, his voice thin with disbelief. Without telling us? Why? Why? I repeated, the word a sharp blade. Because I knew this would happen. I knew you'd try to force her on me just like you always do. I knew you'd prioritize her comfort over my peace, her convenience over my boundaries. I just didn't realize you'd go so far as to give away my keys without a word. My voice was laced with a cold fury, years of unspoken resentment finally bubbling to the surface. You made your choice, Dad. You enabled her. You undermined me. And now, you get to deal with the consequences. I hung up before he could respond, the click of the phone echoing in the suddenly silent apartment. The emptiness around me was no longer a void but a promise. The stage was set, the players were in motion. And Chloe, along with my parents, was about to walk into a very empty, very expensive trap. The resentment had festered, the betrayal had cut deep, and now, the obsession with delivering. A potent dose of justice had taken root. The days that followed were a blur of meticulous planning and a strange, almost exhilarating calm. My initial fury had solidified into something colder, sharper, a precise instrument of retribution. Every single detail mattered. I wasn't just leaving. I was orchestrating a grand reveal, a performance designed to leave an indelible mark. I began by systematically removing every trace of myself from the apartment. Not just my clothes and personal items, but anything that screamed Chloe lives here. I emptied the pantry of my favorite snacks, took down the framed photos from my college graduation, even replaced the quirky, brightly colored bath mat with a plain, neutral one I bought specifically for this purpose. It was an erasure, a deliberate unmaking of my presence, ensuring that, when they finally walked in, the emptiness would be deafening. The real genius, I thought, lay in the financial aspect. My parents, bless their naive hearts, had always been so proud of my frugality. They never questioned how I managed to live comfortably in downtown Chicago on a modest salary. They just assumed I was a budgeting wizard. What they didn't know was that I had been quietly, diligently, building a financial fortress for years. Every bonus, every extra shift, every penny I could squirrel away had gone into a separate, untraceable account. This wasn't just about escape. It was about ensuring my future was completely unburdened by their expectations, or my sister's perpetual need for a safety net. I had researched, consulted with a discreet financial advisor, and moved everything. Every cent that mattered was now untouchable, a stark contrast to the carefully curated illusion of my struggling independence. The apartment itself became a character in my play. I knew the exact date they planned to give Chloe the keys. My parents, in their infinite wisdom, had even announced it to me, oblivious to the irony. "She'll be so grateful, honey," my mother had chirped, envisioning a tearful reunion between sisters. I had simply hummed in agreement, picturing a very different kind of gratitude. I made sure all the utilities were set to automatically disconnect the day after their planned handover. Electricity, internet, even the building's trash service, all on a timer. The thought of Chloe arriving to a dark, silent apartment, unable to even charge her phone or look up the nearest takeout, brought a grim smile to my face. It was a subtle touch, but one that would amplify the message. The hardest part, surprisingly, wasn't the emotional detachment, but maintaining the charade with my parents. Their calls still came, filled with updates about Chloe's progress and veiled hints about how I should be more understanding. I listened, offered non-committal responses, and felt absolutely nothing. The emotional well had run dry, replaced by a steely resolve. Each conversation was another brick in the wall I was building around myself, a wall that would soon be impenetrable. I even feigned enthusiasm when my mother mentioned Chloe's excitement about living like a grown-up in my place. The irony was so thick, I could almost taste it. The day before the planned handover, I sent a carefully worded email to my landlord, giving my official notice. It was curt, professional, and left no room for negotiation. I packed the last few essentials into a single suitcase, leaving behind everything else. My furniture, my appliances, even my beloved collection of rare books. All were part of the sacrifice, pieces of the old Chloe I was shedding. They would find an empty shell, a hollow victory. The final act was to change all my passwords, delete my social media accounts, and sever every digital tie that could connect me to them. It was a digital ghosting, a complete disappearance from their online world. As I stood in the now barren apartment, the echo of my footsteps the only sound, a profound sense of liberation washed over me. The light filtering through the window seemed brighter, the air cleaner. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. I thought of Chloe, of my parents, of all the years of quiet resentment and unacknowledged pain. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. They were about to discover that the steady moon they had always taken for granted had finally found its own orbit, far, far away from their shadow. The stage was set, the audience was waiting, and the curtain was about to rise on a performance they would never forget. The air in the apartment crackled with an almost palpable tension, a silent hum before the storm. I watched from the doorway, a ghost in my own home, as Chloe, oblivious, began her performance. She moved with an exaggerated grace, her voice carrying a feigned sweetness as she spoke to our parents on speakerphone, painting a vivid, heartbreaking picture of her supposed destitution. Each word was a calculated dagger, twisting the narrative to her advantage, making herself the perpetual victim. My mother's soft coos and my father's gruff reassurances filled the room, a familiar symphony of enabling that used to send a cold dread through me. Not anymore. Tonight, their blind devotion was just another instrument in my orchestra. I saw the flicker of triumph in Chloe's eyes as she hung up, a smug smile playing on her lips. She thought she had won, that she had once again manipulated them into doing her bidding, securing her free ride. She didn't know the real show was about to begin. I stepped fully into the living room, my presence a sudden sharp intake of breath for her. Her smile faltered, replaced by a look of bewildered annoyance. "Sarah? What are you doing here? I thought you were out." Her voice was laced with a thinly veiled irritation, the mask of the helpless victim already slipping. "I am out, Chloe," I replied, my voice steady, devoid of the usual tremor of frustration she was so accustomed to hearing. "I'm out of patience, out of excuses, and soon you'll be out of this apartment." Her eyes widened, a flicker of genuine shock replacing the annoyance. She opened her mouth to protest, to launch into one of her familiar tirades, but I cut her off, my voice rising just enough to carry the weight of years of unspoken resentment. "Don't even start, Chloe. I've heard it all before. The tears, the poor me act, the endless stream of convenient crises designed to make everyone else cater to your every whim." I walked slowly towards her, each step deliberate, each word a hammer blow. "This apartment, Chloe, isn't just four walls, it's my sanctuary. It's a testament to every late night, every penny saved, every sacrifice I made to build something for myself, something you've always taken for granted." Her face hardened, the vulnerability she had shown our parents vanishing completely. "What are you talking about, Sarah? I'm your sister, I'm homeless. Mom and Dad said I could stay here." Her voice was shrill, desperate, a stark contrast to her earlier performance. She was cornered, and the true Chloe, the entitled manipulative one, was clawing her way out. "They said you could stay here because you lied to them, Chloe. Just like you've lied about everything else your entire life." I pulled out my phone, the screen already open to the security camera footage I had secretly installed. "Remember that homeless situation? The one where you claimed your ex threw you out with nothing? Funny, because my camera caught you moving out of his apartment with 3 overflowing suitcases, a designer handbag, and a very expensive-looking new laptop." I watched the color drain from her face, her eyes fixed on the screen, the undeniable proof of her deceit staring back at her. The air crackled again, but this time it was different. It was the sound of a carefully constructed facade crumbling, of years of lies collapsing under the weight of undeniable truth. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The master manipulator for the first time was speechless. "And the destitute part?" I continued, my voice unwavering. "My bank statements show a very healthy transfer from your ex-boyfriend's account, a substantial sum, actually. More than enough for you to find your own place, Chloe. But why do that when you can just manipulate Mom and Dad, and through them, me?" I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "You didn't come here for help, Chloe. You came here because it was convenient. Because you thought you could walk all over me, just like you always have." Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, a way to spin this. But there was none. The evidence was irrefutable. The silence stretched, thick with the weight of her exposed lies. Then, a slow, dawning realization spread across her face, followed by a flush of furious indignation. You planned this, didn't you? You set me up. she hissed, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. I simply prepared, Chloe, I corrected her, a cold satisfaction spreading through me. For years, I let you dictate the narrative. I let you play the victim, and I played the fool. But not anymore. This isn't a safe haven for you, Chloe. This is where your free ride ends. I gestured towards the door, my hand steady. You have exactly 1 hour to pack your bags and leave. If you're not out by then, I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing. And trust me, I have all the evidence they'll need. The shock on her face morphed into a desperate, pleading expression, but it was too late. The curtain had fallen on her performance, and the audience, for the first time, was seeing the true star of the show, me. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone else take center stage. The years of quiet resentment, of feeling invisible, culminated in this moment. It wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. It was about reclaiming my own space, my own life, and finally, my own voice. The bitter taste of past hurts still lingered, but it was now mixed with the sweet, clean air of liberation. The bitter taste of past hurts still lingered, but it was now mixed with the sweet, clean air of liberation. I walked into my apartment, the one I had so carefully cultivated, the one that had been so brazenly invaded, and felt a profound sense of detachment. It wasn't mine anymore. Not in the way it had been before. The physical space remained, but its meaning had shifted. This wasn't a sanctuary to reclaim, it was a stage for the final act. I took a deep breath, the scent of stale air and something vaguely floral, Chloe's cheap perfume, no doubt, filling my lungs. Every item out of place, every discarded wrapper, every stain on the counter was a tiny, infuriating monument to her disrespect. Yet, strangely, I felt no anger, only a cold, calculating resolve. My phone buzzed. It was Mom. Sarah, darling, how are things with Chloe? She said you two were going to have a heart-to-heart. Her voice was sickly sweet, a performance I'd heard 1,000 times. I smiled, a genuine, if slightly chilling, smile. Things are progressing, Mom. Chloe and I are on the same page now. In fact, I'm just about to help her pack. A beat of silence. Pack? But she just got there. She needs time to get back on her feet, dear. The familiar refrain. Oh, she's back on her feet, Mom, more than you know. I hung up before she could protest further. The game was on. I found Chloe sprawled on my sofa, a bag of chips open on her chest, watching a reality show, completely oblivious. She looked up, startled, as I entered. Oh, hey, Sarah. You're back. I thought you were staying at a friend's. Her tone was casual, as if she hadn't just been living off my generosity and trashing my home. I decided to come home, I said, my voice even, devoid of the emotion that had churned within me for so long. And I decided it's time for you to go home too. Chloe scoffed, sitting up. What are you talking about? Mom said I could stay as long as I need. Mom doesn't own this apartment, Chloe. I do. I walked over to the coffee table, picking up a crumpled tissue, and I've decided your need has officially expired. Her eyes narrowed. You're kicking me out? After everything? After what happened with Mark? I have nowhere to go. Her voice rose, tinged with the familiar whine. That's not my problem, Chloe. It never was. I walked into my bedroom, opening the closet. All my clothes were gone, replaced by a few of Chloe's haphazardly hung garments. She'd clearly made herself at home. I pulled out a large suitcase I'd hidden earlier. What are you doing? Chloe demanded, following me. I'm helping you pack, like I told Mom. I started pulling her clothes off the hangers, tossing them into the suitcase. You can't do this. I'll tell Mom and Dad everything. They'll be so disappointed in you. She tried to snatch a blouse from my hand. I held it firm. Tell them what, Chloe? That you trashed my apartment, used my credit cards, and thought you could just live off me indefinitely? Because I've already told them. And I have the receipts to prove it. Her face paled. You wouldn't. Oh, I would. And I did. I pulled out my phone, showing her a screenshot of a text message to my parents, detailing every single transgression, complete with dates, times, and photographic evidence. The silence in the room was deafening. Her bravado crumbled. Please, Sarah, don't. I'll pay you back. I swear. Her voice was small now, a stark contrast to her usual bluster. You can't pay me back, Chloe. Not for this. I continued packing, methodically, deliberately. I watched her face, the flicker of fear, then resentment, then a dawning comprehension. She finally understood. This wasn't about a few weeks on my couch. This was about years of being overlooked, of being taken for granted, of being the invisible sister. This was about me, Sarah, finally drawing a line in the sand. Your flight to Mom and Dad's is at 8 a.m. tomorrow, I stated, zipping up the last suitcase. I've already arranged for an Uber to pick you up at 6. Chloe stood there, defeated, her shoulders slumped. The star of the show was finally off her stage. I walked to the door, opened it, and gestured. Good night, Chloe. She picked up her bags, the weight of them seeming to mirror the weight of her sudden reality. As she stepped out, she turned, her eyes meeting mine. There was no anger, no apology. Just a raw, stripped-bare vulnerability I had never seen before. It was the look of someone who had finally hit rock bottom, who had nowhere left to run. I closed the door, the click echoing in the suddenly quiet apartment. The bitter taste of past hurts was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace. The air felt clean, fresh, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. The apartment was still a mess, but it was my mess, and I could clean it on my own terms. The keys to my apartment, the symbol of my independence, were firmly back in my hand. And this time, no one would ever take them from me again. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. The moon was out, steady and bright, casting its own powerful light. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like the star of my own story. The air in the courtroom crackled with a tension so thick I could practically taste it. Every eye was on me as I stood, my heart a drumbeat against my ribs, ready to finally speak my truth. This wasn't just about the apartment anymore. It was about years of being overlooked, of being the invisible daughter. My parents sat opposite, their faces a mixture of confusion and hurt, completely unprepared for the storm I was about to unleash. Sarah, my sister, fidgeted beside them, her usual bravado replaced by a nervous tremor. For years, I began, my voice clear despite the tremor in my hands. I watched my sister receive everything. The best schools, the new car, the endless praise. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who was always expected to just handle it. I paused, letting the words hang in the silence. When I finally saved enough to buy my own place, a small victory I earned entirely on my own, it felt like a declaration of independence. It was mine. My gaze swept over my parents. Then, without a word, without a thought for my privacy or my boundaries, you gave Sarah the keys. Not just a spare, but the keys, as if it was still your property to hand out, as if I didn't exist. The betrayal, fresh and sharp, sliced through me again. You allowed her to use my home, my sanctuary, as her personal crash pad, without my knowledge or consent. And when I confronted you, your only concern was how I was making her feel. Sarah flinched, but I wasn't done. This isn't about a set of keys. This is about a lifetime of feeling like I was less important, less loved. This is about being treated as an extension of your expectations, not as an individual with my own life, my own dreams, my own right to privacy. The words poured out, years of pent-up resentment finally finding their voice. You called me selfish, ungrateful. You said I was overreacting. But what about my feelings? What about the feeling of coming home to find someone else's mess in my kitchen? What about the violation of knowing my own family had so little respect for me? The judge listened impassively, but I could see the subtle shift in my parents' expressions. The initial shock was giving way to something akin to dawning comprehension, mixed with a healthy dose of shame. Sarah, however, looked furious. She opened her mouth to interrupt, but her lawyer placed a restraining hand on her arm. I didn't want this to come to court, I continued, my voice softening slightly. But you left me no choice. I tried to talk, to explain, to make you understand. But you refused to listen. You dismissed my feelings, just as you always have. This isn't about money, or even just the damage to my apartment. This is about demanding to be seen, to be heard, to be respected as your daughter. I took a deep breath, the air feeling lighter now that the truth was out. I moved out that day, not because I was running, but because I needed space to breathe, to heal. I needed to build a life where my boundaries were respected, where my existence wasn't contingent on someone else's approval. The judge cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Miss Chloe, while the emotional aspects of this case are clear, we must address the legal ramifications of the damages incurred. I nodded. I understand, Your Honor. The repairs, the cleaning, the loss of income from the disruption, these are the tangible costs of a deeper emotional betrayal. I looked directly at my parents, my eyes unwavering. I hope, after today, that you understand the true cost, not just in dollars but in trust, in family, in the years of silence that led to this moment. The verdict came swiftly. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering Sarah to pay for the damages and my parents to contribute a portion, citing their negligence in handing over the keys. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the validation. As the gavel struck, a wave of relief washed over me, a bittersweet release. Leaving the courtroom, I didn't look back. My parents called out, but I kept walking. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like it was truly my path. The closure wasn't a grand reunion or a tearful apology. It was the quiet understanding that I had stood up for myself, claimed my voice, and set myself free. The cost was high, a fractured family, but the peace I felt was priceless. I was no longer the invisible daughter. I was Chloe, and I was finally truly home within myself.